Hi and welcome back to PSC's Playground. I hope you've really enjoyed the live demonstration that Joe and I have put on for you and that you've gotten some great tips on how to shoot pets in the studio environment. Right now I'm just going to show you how I edit a couple of the images. I'll just be cleaning up two different ones because there's two different kind of steps that we need to take with these ones, but basically I'll be going through and doing a full edit to show you how I would edit them before I send them off to print for clients' wall art. So yeah, let's have a look here. Alright, so I've just chosen these two images of Mia for today's demonstration. One has her sitting directly on the floor and one's got her sitting on the poof with a little bit of colour in it as well. So there's not a lot of difference that we need to do to these two. So I'm going to first of all start off with the global raw adjustments. I use Camera Raw. I know that a lot of people use Lightroom and it is very similar. So if you are a Lightroom user, you don't need to switch over to Raw to do what I do. It's just, this is just my preference. So I'm always using a Wacom. I like my stylus. So if you're still using a mouse, I highly suggest investing in one of these. It's definitely a time saver. So first of all, I'm going to set my white point on my images. That's a bit, that's gonna, alright, so I think it needs to be a little bit warmer. I'm just going to pull the magenta out of it a little bit. Then we're just going to adjust a few different of these sliders. I don't use presets. My workflow is very haphazard and it depends on how I'm feeling on the day as to how I want an image to look. So yeah, so at the moment I'm just going to up the exposure a little bit on here and you'll see that that is creating a lot of light spill then onto the background. So I'll show you how to fix that up as well. Alright, we definitely want to get some more punch into those highlights. And I'm going to bring the shadows up as well. So basically when I am editing, I am doing this, I'm looking more at the dog than I am at the background because that's what I want to be perfect. I can fix the background really easily. So yeah, just a couple more. Just a little bit of clarity. Depending on what camera and lens you're using, this dehaze slider can be really cool. I know when I use my camera and lens, I find the dehaze quite handy to have just turn it up a little bit. With the vibrance and saturation, I like to use vibrance, not saturation. I usually just pop that up a little bit. With curve, this can help you control your highlights a little bit more. You can see as I pull that right up, the bling around her neck is going right up. So we just want to pull that up a little bit. The lights is more of a overall punchiness, and then the darks as well is more of an overall punchiness for the darks there. So then we've got our shadows. Probably just pop that up a wee bit. I never touch the detail in here. Mine's always set to radius of 1, sharpening of 40, detail of 25. I never touch it. I just leave it alone. If I need to sharpen, I generally will do it in Photoshop or I will use Topaz sharpening, which is another program that I highly recommend. So with the colour here, so you'll find with Mia she has a lot of orange and yellow in her fur, and this can be a really good way of balancing that. So we don't want to bring her right up and make her look like a twisty, but we do want to give her a little bit of punch in those browns, but we can take that yellow down then so that it looks more natural. Then with the greens, I find, depending on, once again, what camera and lens I'm using, there can be a lot of green or no green. With my one, I always pull the greens right down because generally I don't shoot with any green in the scene anyway, and I'll just pull it right out of there. With your Cyans can be very much like that as well. I do tend to shoot with a lot of cyan in my images, but with this image there's no cyan in it, so I'll probably just pull that down, pull the blues right down. Purples don't tend to show up too much in the work that I do, so I'll pull that right off as well. And magenta I don't do too much too, because it's usually changing the highlights and the colour of dogs' ears and tongues and stuff like that. So then we've got the luminance here. So luminance can be a really good way of giving your image a little bit more punch in the colours. So you can see there how with the luminance in the oranges, I can give the image just quite a bit more punch just by bringing those up a little bit. Now with the yellows here, I don't want to go too far with that because we're trying to keep that sort of down a little bit to contrast off the oranges. Greens, the aquas, the blues, it's not really much point in touching those in this particular image because there's really not much there to worry about. Colour grading can be a really good one to use. I generally don't use it too much with this kind of work, but if I was doing awards work or even like outside work, it can really help. So optics, always use the profile corrections. We've got this one's not picking it up for me today. Normally it will straight away, so I know that I shot this on the Nikon Z6 and there we go, and it's picked up the lens for me there, the 24-70. I quite like to just use that lens correction. It's just, I don't know, it's probably personal preference like most of editing really. Now I'm not going to touch the geometry effects or calibration just yet. What I am going to do is I'm going to use the crop. I just about always use a 4:5 crop with my client work, which gives me the right aspect ratio for printing 8x10s. And I generally keep all of my work in that same aspect ratio because it's just, then it's consistent. And it's consistent with the artwork that I have on the walls that the clients can see. So I'm going to bring that in for Mia here. We can see we've still got our light stands in the back, but I'll show you how to very easily get rid of those once we move into Photoshop. It's now that I'll go and rather than doing global images, I'll just go back with this one and go back to the color mixer, because we do have a lot of orange in this one. We've brought the highlights up really high using that color, and we want to make sure that we don't overdo it. So I'm just going to pull the yellows down a bit more. You can see that that's really yellow in the background there. So I don't want that there anyway, and it's not really affecting Mia too much. It's pulling it out to make it a little bit more natural. So that's basically what we want. I'm just looking here. Sometimes I might change the hue. Just with the colour of the dog's tongues, they can sometimes come up a little bit orange. So I like to just pink them up a little bit, I guess. I'm finding that the orange in the bow really overpowering at the moment, but if I change the hue on that, it's going to change the hue on Mia, and we don't want that. So what I'll do is I'll do that later on in Photoshop as a specific edit rather than worrying about it now. And same with the poof. I would have liked this the poof to be a little bit more pink, so we'll look at that when we take it into Photoshop. But for this one now, I'm just going to fix up the crop of little Mia. Just bring her in a bit. I think that should about do it. Now, the other thing that I like to do in Camera Raw is I do actually use the geometry adjustments in Camera Raw quite a lot. So first I quite like to just, the vertical one, and I'm not saying that Mia is a little chunky because she's actually really great, but if you get a chunky dog in, to help sort of balance them out and thin them out a bit, the vertical can be quite a nifty tool. Just to, it kind of just makes their head just look a little bit bigger, which will help slim down the body a little bit. But you don't want to go crazy. You don't want this kind of look, or just a touch, so it looks like that they're leaning forward a bit like when we do, so that we don't see our double chin. Okay, so everything else in this one looks pretty good as far as the geometry goes. Now this one here, I'm just going to do the same thing. See the difference with the vertical there? Just changes the way that Mia looks. She looks a little bit more regal as well by changing that vertical slider in geometry. Sometimes you can use the horizontal one as well. It really depends on the lens that you're using as to the effect that you get, as to whether you need to use it, I guess. Obviously rotate's a really great one if if you're a bit crooked. I sometimes shoot quite crooked when I'm laying down on the floor. It looks straight to me in the camera, but then when I get it out, it's definitely not. So yeah, now vignetting is something that you can use quite well here in Camera Raw. It's quite a handy tool for, so you can sort of see how that I've just put on a really soft vignette. But what I'm going to do is, instead of doing it now, I'm going to take this, remove that adjustment that I just did, and I'm going to take it into Photoshop, and I will apply that vignetting later on. And it just, usually towards the end, once I've done everything else. So yeah, I'll show you how to do that a little bit later on, non-destructively. So we're going to take that one back down to 0. And for now, the only thing I'm just going to have a look at, you've got to be careful here just to make sure that you haven't clipped whites. These look pretty good. I might just bring that down just a wee bit on that one, and that one's looking good. So open objects, always open from Camera Raw into Photoshop with Smart Objects. This way, this is why. All right, so if you decide that you want to go back later on and you don't want to start again, so you can just double click on this and it's going to take you straight back into Camera Raw, and you can make adjustments again right on your base file. So that's the best way to do it, so that you don't lose or do any destructive edits that you can't fix up later on. So for this one, first of all, I always copy my layer. Always. Now I'm going to need to rasterize the layer just to be able to remove these. If you hold down the shift and the select tool at the same time, you can get these all in one. Now then you just do shift F5, and we want to change that to content aware, and so hopefully that does a good enough job of getting rid of most of those. So you can see down here I didn't select it all. I will just use the clone tool here because I don't want to mess up any of the poof. So, alright, so the next step that I always take with my images is, right now, is I will take this into Topaz Labs and make a mask. I want to mask the dog off from the background just to make life easier. There's no point in trying to clean up this background and make it even and lovely, and trying to avoid the edges of the dog and the poof and whatnot. So let's just make a mask straight off the bat, and then we've got it for the entire time we're editing. So I've got my Topaz Labs in here in filters as plugins. So you can now, I just go to Topaz Mask AI, and we just open that up right inside of Photoshop so that we don't have to take things back and forward. Now this is the newest version of the Topaz masking. It used to be Topaz Remask, which was quite great, but it didn't have this handy little thing. So it selects the subject for you. It's a handy tool, especially when you've just got a single subject. I'm just going to go in and define my selection. So you want the selection to be right around the edge of the dog. Make sure we've got the ears. It didn't pick up that for us. Now this part here, we want to just get the poof into the selection. The select subject tends to just select the actual living subject rather than the furniture that the dog's sitting on. So there we go. There we want to change this to the green is the stuff is what we're going to keep. So we just, because it's selected the subject, we want it to keep all of this here. There we go. And just fix this up a little bit. The blue is where it's going to compute, so you want to make sure. So you see in here there's this little bit with Mia's, you know, seeing through Mia's leg there, so we just want to do that, give it that chance to compute that bit for us. And we've got the green here. You can also just do this as well. So alright, so I think that's it. Now what I'm going to do is there's 3 masking modes in Topaz. One is the AI, one is translucent, so you would use that. Sometimes I find that really good if you've got dog with wispy hair, it'll pick it up quite well. And contrast is colour contrast, the same as what you would use if you're using the refine edge tool in Photoshop. Using the colour range tool in Photoshop. So we're just going to compute the mask and see how it goes. Alright, so I'm just going to change this to single view so that we can see it. Pop it on the mask so I can see how it's created the mask. Now you can see it's done a really good job there. This does a really great job on those wispy hairs as well, those really hard to pick up ones. I find this program to be, for masking animal fur, to be the best there is. I've tried all the other different ways in Photoshop and other programs, and I've just found this one's been fantastic. So if this hadn't come out so well, if it hadn't computed it so well, you could go in and refine it. So you can use, you know, I want to use the brushes to pick up, you know, hairs and stuff like that. I'm not actually really going to touch this one because it's done it so well. And I also don't need the mask to be perfect on this one either. So the other thing, like, you can also go through, and so I'm just clicking translucent down here and computing the mask just to show you that you can get different results with the different kinds of mask modes. So I mean, it's not going to change it too much, but sometimes it's worthwhile. So you can see with that one, it didn't pick up the contrast quite as well because Mia's a dark dog on a dark background. So probably go back to the original and just click apply. So with this, I'll keep this top layer here as my master mask, I guess. And basically, if I just command and click on that, you can see how that's picked it up. Now you can see here that we might need to watch out for the tail area here because we've got our marching ants around it, but for the best part, that's not a bad mask for what we want to do right now. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Sorry, before I do that, I'll just show you, all I did was hit the mask button down the bottom, and I'm just going to hit Command I to invert that mask. So now that Mia is completely masked off, and I can do, there's a few different ways that you can clean up your background. One of my favorite ways and quickest and easiest is I just create a new layer, Shift F5 again, choose a color, and we'll probably just choose a color like so. Right, so now we've got this complete background. If you want to now repeat this mask, you can just hold down the Alt key or Option key and drag your mask up onto your color layer. All right, so now we've got a completely solid background with no variation. I don't actually like that. I like to have variation. I think it looks a lot more natural. So I would just pull this down a little bit and just change the opacity. But you can see the difference in how it smooths it out. All right. So one thing that will and can happen in with this particular way of doing things is getting banding in that background. So I always do what most people hate doing. I add noise. I love adding noise to my images. It softens them, gives it texture. It's pretty. Yeah, so here, I usually, I mean, we can go into 100%, but I know that you can already see it's already set to 3 on monochromatic with the Gaussian. So we're just going to say yes to that one. And you can see by pulling that opacity down on this layer is that we haven't lost her little whiskers, you know, that are sort of coming off the sides of her face here. Whereas if we keep it solid, that's when we start losing those. Yeah, I'm going to bring that back down. Go back out. So that's not so bad just yet. We do have some variation there. It's probably a little bit much. So one of the other things I like to do is I like to take my mixer brush tool, which a lot of portrait photographers will use for retouching skin and so on. And I don't use any colours or anything like that. Very minimal settings up here. You can play around with these settings yourself. They do actually have meanings, but for what we're doing, it just doesn't matter. So I'm just going to smooth that out. See how that's now going to... And I'm doing that on a separate layer with the sample all layers so that you can pick up all the, you know, it's like a clone tool, but it just smooths everything out. So if I take that off, you can see the difference now in the color and the evenness of that, but it doesn't make it so even that it looks fake. All right, so we're then going to do it over this side as well because we've got that dark corner. Okay, so look at that. Now what I'll do here is I'll actually pop on another noise layer. We want to pop that on just about 2 is probably enough, just so it blends in nicely. You can see that it all just blends in there quite nicely now. Now I'm going to be looking at the just quickly retouching eye boogies and stuff. Mia's quite a clean dog, so we don't need to do too much of that, but I just use the healing tool. Yeah, the main thing that we're going to want to do with Mia is you can see that she's we've got sometimes with dogs when we're photographing them, because we're using handlers, the arms of the handler will come across the catch light of the dog's eye and leave this bit of a mess. So we do need to clean that up because otherwise they look a little bit off. So yeah, and also I think I mentioned in our demonstration how catch lights reflect differently in animals' eyes, dogs' eyes especially, than humans do. So they won't be perfect the way that they do in humans' eyes. That's why we shoot with the key light down across the top, like right above my head, so that it gives them nicer catch lights. Now I'm just going to go in here, right in, basically because I'm a bit blind as well. And I'm just going to, hold on, we have got, alright, just bear with me. I'm going to use the So now we can see that that's a bit cleaner than what it was a minute ago. So that just makes all the difference when you're actually hanging these large on a wall. You know, if I was on my own, I'd probably clean up a little bit. You know, probably just a few of these little bits and pieces. You know, depends on the dog. Sometimes they've got more boogies and stray hairs than others. Mia's quite clean and lovely. So we're gonna just leave that bit there. All right, now what we're going to do, what I like to do is I'm going to then just pop on a levels layer. I like to have a look and see, so you can see that that's going to be quite bright and we've got no black. So you don't want to clip your blacks. I tend to, if I'm going to do this, I'll take note of what's happening when I'm doing that so that I can then just mask it off. It was clipping the blacks in here and it was clipping the whites over here. As you can see, it's it's a very minimal adjustment, but it just gives that little bit more punch. Now I'm going to look at changing, well, fixing up the colour of the bow tie and the poof. I don't actually want them quite that orange, so I'm probably looking at using the red slider and maybe the yellow one. We'll start off with the red. So we just want to deal with the reds at the moment. I'm going to change that now to a colour that's a little bit, a bit closer to what I was hoping to get in camera. It's the bow tie that are not quite as orange as they seem here. Get the yellow. It's not really doing much there, is it? Which is good. Magentas, no. And then sometimes you can do this. Now you can see that the whole colour of Mia is changing here a little bit. We're going to mask this off just by painting it in. So here we're going to go down to our mask on our hue and saturation layer, and I'm going to invert it so that it takes that away. We're going to get our brush tool. I use 100% opacity, a lot of people don't. It just depends on how fast I'm trying to work, I guess. Make sure we've got, because we've got a black mask here, we want white to reveal what's underneath. So we've got a hard brush on too, so we want to soften that just for now. See how that goes. And you can see that is a nicer colour. I'll just go in. So you can see I've gone over Mia, and you can tell here we want to take that off. She doesn't have a pinky purpley magenta fur. We don't want her to have that. You can see here with this we've got the tail issue. Forgot about that, so we'll just go back into our mask on our solid colour layer to actually fix that up. I'll do that in just a second. First we want to change this. Wrong colour. So you can use the X key to change between black and white, between your black and white brushes, so that I've always got my finger on that key. I'm just sort of showing you relatively quickly. If you're wanting to spend more time, get a better mask, that you know, that can always pay off, especially if you're printing large. All right. So now I can definitely play with these colours and see what I like better, because it's just changing the colours of the bow and the poof now, see? Just with that hue saturation layer. So I quite like this. You can see down here that I've missed that mask, and I mean, you can always press the slash key on the right hand side that's just under the delete key, and it'll show you your mask and how terribly you've done it or how well you've done it. So we can fix that up. But you know, depending on the colour that you're changing and how drastically you're changing it, sometimes your mask just doesn't need to be that good anyway. I'm just going to go in and fix that mask on the tail. So you've got the background over it. And because we chose a colour that's really close to what the background originally was, that's also a reason why you don't need a perfect mask here either. Feet are nice and done. Alright, so that's looking pretty good so far. The next thing that I will do, I'll show you what I do, is I actually have a texture that I like to use over my background sometimes. Let me just find it. Pretty sure it's this one. No, not that one. I've got a whole set of different textures that I like to use. I've got a specific one I'm looking for at the moment though, of course. Come back. Certainly not that one. That's the one I'm after. So I'm just going to drag that straight onto the top of the image. You can see here it opens up automatically as a smart object for me, and I just pull it out to fill the back there. Now we want to obviously reveal Mia, so all I did was drag the mask back up, holding down the Alt or the Option key, and I'm going to actually just pull that down a little bit. I don't play around with these a little bit. You can use different blending modes as well, so you can get different effects. What's the one? There's, I mean, soft light's quite nice there. We've also got, you know, just play around and see what you like. Just for today's purposes, I'm going to use the overlay, I think. And what I might do is I might just put another levels layer, clip it just to that one there, and just bring up the light a little bit. And look, the last couple of steps I'm just going to show you is so I just flattened my image without flattening it. So I've made a flat layer on top of all my other layers, and I do that by Shift, Option, Command, E. Alright, it's a bit to remember, but it is quite handy to be able to do that. I'm just going to check out here. So the mask here is a little bit more important. So I'm just going to probably take down my opacity, and we're going to just you can sort of see how that's has hidden some of those sins of the mask there on the tail. The other places to look is these little fiddly places. There we go. Alright, just check around your doggo. So we've still got all the whiskers and everything there. Just soften that edge a little bit. Really take that down to 20% opacity. Learn how to use your shortcut keys, guys. It's going to make all of the difference. So if you want that at 20% opacity, you just press 2 on your keyboard while you're on your brush mode there. Alright, and so I'll probably just soften that a little bit. Alright, so we're at this point now. So this is where I'll use the flatten layer image, the Shift Option Command E, and this is where I'm going to just sort of have a look and see whether I need to sharpen. Now it's a pretty sharp image as it is, but I'm just going to do a little unsharp just to bring out that nose and the eyes a little bit more. So I mean, it depends on the lens and the camera that you're using as to what your settings will be here, but generally I'll go for like a 300% and a 0.3. That's probably a bit much for Mia at this point, so we'll bring that down a little bit to about 190. But if you take it off and on, you can see it's just a really subtle difference. We don't want to make her crunchy. Now the last thing that there's two more things that I like to do. Just quickly, I dodge and burn. I'm just going to do very briefly, but mostly I do it on the eyes and the nose, just to enhance the features of the dog. So basically I've actually made an action for this, but I'm going to show you the settings. So we're going to have a new layer. We're going to fill it with 50% grey. Okay, and we're going to put it on soft light mode. Then we're going to go over here to our dodge and burn tools. So I start off with the dodge. Usually I just keep it usually in the mid-tones with a 10% exposure. Now our lighting was really good the other day, so we don't need to do too much here, but if it was a bit flat, we could add in some highlights on the nose, start looking at things like the eyebrows, ears, just to enhance what we've got here. The other thing that this can really help with is just to enhance the eyes. So first of all, I'm just looking at, Mia doesn't have a lot of white around her eyes in this image in particular, but I'm just going to enhance it a little bit. We don't want to make her look like a zombie. So we need to take it easy, but sometimes dogs, especially the older dogs, will have like a brown, sorry about that. Older dogs will have a brown around their eyes. It's sort of like a discoloration in the whites of their eyes, so this can sort of help brighten it up a little bit and draw a little bit more attention to the eyes. Now, the main thing that I want to do here with Mia is I want to burn down her pupils. So you can see, being that she's a bit older, the light has reflected off her pupils and given them a bit of a washed out grey look. I don't know whether Mia has cataracts, but this can be a sign of it as well, and you'll find that a lot of dogs sort of, over the age of 7 or 8 will have this same thing. So I just darken the pupils down. It just makes them look more real, like what we normally see, because we don't normally see, generally, them that bright and white. So once again, I keep this on the mid-tones as well. And we don't want to make it like an even black dot. You see that sometimes, and dogs look like zombies, look like they're dead, or the eyes don't look quite right. It's because somebody's taken a brush and put a big hard black dot there. That's why just take a little bit more time to do it this way, but it will keep the dog looking real. I do like to go around the outside of the eyes like this and just give that nice little framing, bit of eyeliner, I guess. Alright, so and now I'm just going to make it bigger, and I'm going to do it just a quick darken. As you can see, it's given the eye a little bit more shine and contrast. So you can see the difference there. We've probably made it a little bit too white down in that corner there, but it's easily fixed. Alright, so that's generally what I will do with that, and you can sort of see the difference there in Mia's eyes. I mean, if you do go too far, which is quite easy to do, you can just pull the opacity back a little bit. I might do that here, and you can see that's it's much nicer. So the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another flat layer with the Shift Option Command E, and I'm going to open this one up in Camera Raw. So, and this is where I'm going to put that vignette on, like we talked about earlier. So you can sort of see I'm going to bring that in there, bring your midpoint in if you like. You can change the shape so it's a square shape, that's a rounder shape. I like to, for this image, a rounder shape's really going to work. You can feather it out more, so I mean, you don't want to do that, but you can sort of see the difference as you feather it, how heavy it becomes. Alright, so you can see that vignette there now, and I mean that's always personal taste as well as to how far you go with your vignette. I generally then come in and I'll just always end up masking off just a little bit, just with a soft brush, 20%, and so that's pretty much it there for that one of Mia. I'm going to take just a quick break right at the moment and reset, and then we're going to have a look at the other one. I won't be a moment. Hey guys, thanks for hanging around. I know you didn't really go anywhere, it was only me. But I've just quickly touched up this other one of Mia, done all the other all the things that I already showed you in the other edit with, you know, creating the mask and removing the backdrop stands, that sort of thing. Now just basically all I really want to do is show you how I treat the background differently when they're sitting on the floor. So let's go over there. Alright, excuse me. So it's not a huge difference, but I'm going to do what I did last time and fill with a foreground colour close to what Mia looks is already sitting on. We're going to make our mask, Command Invert, alright, and we're going to bring the opacity of that one down again. Now you will see down here we do have some issues with our mask, but it's really easy to fix generally. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can go around and do it manually with the brush on your mask. This is another way, is just to shift your edge. Sorry, we went the wrong way. Just in a little bit like that. You can feather it a little bit. So you can see that's got rid of most of the issue. Make sure that if you're going to do it this way that it's not coming in on other parts of the dog that you don't want it to be, but that's looking pretty good right there. So the other, I'm just going to quickly do this manually, do it on about a 50% opacity just to make sure that we got, you know, because the colour is so close to the background there, it's not It's not too noticeable. You're going to find this a lot harder if you're changing a background from, say, white to black or, you know, hot pink or something like that. Let's see there. Alright, not too bad. Alright, so don't forget I'm going to pop on a little bit of a noise mask, noise on that layer. Again, just create a new layer, and I'm just going to smooth some of this out. You can see that we've got some unevenness here. We just sort of want to clean that up a little bit. So once again, we don't want it to become fake looking. We want to try and keep it as natural as possible, so it will be uneven, because it looks fake when you just plonk a solid colour over the top. Alright, so, and I think this is something that people get wrong all the time, especially when they're doing white or high key images. They think they can just colour the background in solid white or solid black, and what we end up with is a dog floating in outer space, basically. So with so doing it this way, we can maintain our natural shadows. We can see the shadow here of me or in her feet and how the light has created those shadows. So with the mixer brush, if we don't have it here, but we do get it a lot as pet photographers, you can sort of see there's a couple of little stray hairs and things like that. We can get rid of those hairs with the mixer brush without actually damaging our shadows. So it's quite a handy tool to use. Now, a lot of dogs, hairy dogs that lose a lot of hair, and kitty cats, this is going to be a bit more laborious, but it is the quickest way I have figured out how to do this, and how to even the background and get rid of those hairs and dust spots and nasties at the same time. I think any pet photographer will tell you that cleaning up backdrops is probably the bane of our existence, really. Go out here, so we don't want to, so make a nice big one here, because we want to try and maintain the shadows there as much as possible. Alright. So you can see if we take that off there, if we zoom in closer, we can see that we've gotten rid of any sort of hair and muck on the backdrop. I'm going to pop a little noise layer on that one again. A little noise filter, sorry. So here we've got this now. Now I'm going to pop on a darker colour. So because I want my edges to be a bit darker. I'll probably bring it down to about here. Pop that on. Now this is the same, we're going to pull that Command invert. Oh, I see what's happened. Alright, so sometimes when you pull your layer from one to the other, make sure you've got your finger on that Alt key, because you're going to lose it and get confused. So here we are. Alright, so now you can see that I've darkened that down and fixed that light spill up that we had when we were shooting, and I'm just going to tidy up a little bit of the mask here. It has gone a little bit, we don't want that in red, we want that in white, and we want to paint that on just around the feet. Just make sure that we're getting, not leaving any obvious bits there that the mask might have missed. sure you use a soft brush, helps get rid of those edges. Now, should be pretty right everywhere else, because I'm going to show you what we're going to do next, which will help keep all of this a bit more natural looking. Now we are going to use our elliptical tool, and we're going to make a selection. You know, you could use your own discretion as to how big or whatever you want. Basically, I don't want the dog to look like it's all in black and floating in midair. So I'm going to hit the Shift F6 key and feather it. You play around with this. This will depend on how many pixels your camera has and whatnot. So I'm going to start with 600 and see how much it feathers that. Alright, so if I hit the delete key here, you can see how it has lifted that up and made it a little bit more natural. We can also do that in the darker space here as well. And we can do that. So, alright, so you can see how that's just given it a little bit of shine, made that light spill a little bit more even, which is really hard for us to get in camera when we're photographing dogs. Dogs move around a lot, so it's not like we can keep them in the one position and really direct our lights exactly where we want them to go. So we are going to get light spill. Backgrounds are not going to always be perfect, so this is just a really nice way of being able to fix that up. Now the last thing I'm going to do here is I am going to do what I did before, go back into Camera Raw, and we're going to pop a vignette on it. Bring our midpoint in if we want to, roundness, you can decide how you like it, feather it a bit, if you want it a little bit more you can do that, and well, I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm just going to, what I did there is I just popped the mask on, so you can see without the mask her feet end up under that vignette. Now if I pop the mask on there we can bring her feet back out, but generally what I'll do is then I'll just go back in and 20% brush on the white and just add that in, add a little bit. Whoop. We just want to add a little bit on it because we don't want it to look like her feet are way lighter than what the vignette should be. Yeah, so that's pretty much how to get a smooth backdrop really easily and quite quickly, so that you can, when you print your artwork, you don't have to go in there and retouch every tiny single hair and that sort of thing, and you can also get realistic results of the dog actually sitting on the floor. Okay. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope that you've got something out of it. I know that for any photographer running a studio needs to be able to do things quite quickly and get that work out there. So I hope this has helped speed up your workflow a little bit. If nothing else, that background trick is probably the best thing that I ever learned, and has helped me, yeah, create beautiful results really, really fast. So enjoy the rest of the PSC's playground, and thanks to everybody for watching.